Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston Subdivision. My name is Darrell Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for episode 13 of season 2024. This is a pretty cool episode as there's been a lot of changes and a lot has been done, and definitely looks much more like a realistic railroad from the work that I did this last week. I actually was quite busy, I think, comparatively so. And I'm pretty happy with the way everything turned out. But make sure you stay tuned as we kind of look at the different steps that we went through this week. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and if you get a chance to comment, that'd be great also. But last week, all we had was the general form in and the paper, the rosin paper on top. So we had our basic form ready to go. But this week we finally went and added some plaster and paint and ground foam and paint for the track and backdrops, and definitely did a lot of things. And this is not one of my more favorite things to do, mainly because it's just so messy. We're dealing with plaster and the water and everything, but I used plaster gauze, and I had 6 rolls left from last time. I almost didn't order anymore. I was thinking that might be enough. Turns out, luckily, I did add another pack of 8, and I used everything. I used all 14 rolls of 6-inch wide plaster gauze. Now here you can see I'm only about not even halfway through, although it is actually kind of close to halfway because it's definitely a lot more plaster from one end, from the front to the back. There's a lot of spaces all around the curve and everything where not that much plaster, but I was putting the plaster on and was I usually try to overlap it pretty well so that almost all the spaces have double layer, but as I was going along, I was realizing that I may not have enough. And so as I did this last part here, you can see I didn't really double up the layer all that much. I had to kind of spread it out to make sure that I had enough. And I did use all 14 rolls. I don't have anything left. I used every bit of it. When I got to the end, I basically went back and added what was left here and there to kind of strengthen things. But here you can see I pretty much have everything done. I did put a little strip here on the back side there. I didn't put any cardboard or rosin paper there. So you can see there's a lot of spaces here where it's not doubled up. But it's not a big expanse at all. So it actually won't be that big a deal. Over here where you got more of an area between the fascia and the track, and between the track and the backboard, definitely need more strength here. And I did have this pretty much doubled up here. This is where I started, and then when I went around, I kind of spread it out more and more as I was worried about running out. Now here you can see it's pretty easy, since I put the abutments in first. It was pretty easy to just put the gauze around it. Here you can see the back side. Now this won't be seen at all, so I wasn't too worried about that, but definitely was pretty easy as I try and get my finger out of there to get the gauze to go very evenly around or by the abutments. The signals need to be straightened out a little bit there. So you can see again there's pretty nice even connection between the gauze and the abutments. I kind of decided I would do a little bit of scenery into the staging yard. So from the wood to the white painted wood is the line between the staging yard, which is this here, and then the modeled portion of the layout, which is right there. But I decided to actually go ahead and put a little bit of scenery in there. Now again, this is really messy stuff. I use this paper cutter to cut the gauze, and it's messy. You get powder all over the place. and doesn't come up real easily. I just vacuum it up mainly. But you have to wipe it down some too. I didn't really do a whole lot to protect the floor. And basically what I've been doing is not worrying about the painted floor too much. Try not to get the rugs messed up too much. But the painted floor I'm not too worried about because I am just going to, when I'm done, just repaint it again with some fresh paint. Alright, then once I got all the plaster in there, and you can see here, I have the signals taped up pretty good. After doing the plaster gauze, you can see not only did I paint it red here for rust on the side of the rails, but I also painted the plaster gauze with a 50-50 mix of plaster of Paris. I got a big 25-pound bag from Ace Hardware. So I mix that 50-50. It's supposed to be 2-to-1, 2 plaster to 1 water. But when I paint it on, I just do 1-to-1, 1 part plaster, 1 part water, and then I just use a brush to paint it on, and it takes away the gauze look, so it smooths it out. You can see I covered up the bridge before I painted. Now before I painted, you can't really see there, but I did spray paint the abutments. So after I did the plaster and was done with that, I'm going to have to paint this concrete here yet again at some point in time before I do the ballasting. But anyway, before I started painting the track here, I used some spray paint. After I put the plaster in, then I painted the abutments with some spray paint. And then, as you can see there, I covered up the abutments and sprayed on the rust color here. It's actually more of a wine color. But when you put the brown then on top of it, you just have a little bit of the wine showing through, and it definitely does look like, it does a good job of looking like some rust on the rails along with the brown. Do the red rust color from an angle on the side of the rails, and then the brown, you go from straight down. So the rail, the ties get the brown color which you want, especially the turnouts here, which would have been wood if I hadn't painted it. But also paints all the ties the same color, and then also get some overspray onto the rails, so you have a kind of a mixture of the brown and the red. So it looks like some rust and dirt from the roadway. And as you can see here, I did spray paint the abutments a concrete color, and then the track is painted and ready for ballasting. So for the concrete, I'll get some white, kind of off-white, and paint it from an angle from the inside out. So I won't get any on the side of the rails that you can see, but we'll be able to get the top of the tie as a concrete color for that short section there. So everything, to this point, a lot of mess, a lot of waiting for things to dry too. And then we start working on putting down the actual paint and scenery foam and so forth. And first thing I did is tape off the track. Did not want to get any paint or any scenery material onto the track, so put some wide masking tape on there. There's basically four layers there. And it definitely uses up the tape. You know, basically went through a whole roll. So this started out a full roll, and I have pretty much nothing left from it. So taping this off, took a full roll masking tape. I've gone through a lot of masking tape on this layout. I bought like the 6-packs of them. I only have one roll left, so I have to buy some more. Right now, I start getting the scenery on here, and again, the signals are covered up, tracks covered up, and basically put down some paint. And then when the paint is on, then I start sprinkling some ground foam I get from Woodland Scenics. And I usually start with yellow grass and then put the burnt grass on top of that, and then maybe a little bit more yellow grass on top of that, and then some coarse turf. So I start off with a fine turf, and then on top of that put the coarse turf. And I didn't put just a little bit of clump foliage, especially here on the end. But since this was going to be part of a city, I didn't want it to look as wild as what you might have out in the hills and mountains of the Evanston Sub. So this is, a city area here. So I only went to the coarse turf and just put a little bit of clump foliage down. And here for the staging yard, I just stuck with the fine grass. I didn't worry about doing anything beyond that. So just going to be just some coverage there. And I did that mainly because I wanted the turnouts to be painted. I didn't want them to remain wood color. And there you can see the paint that I use. It's Sonoran Desert is the color. Now here you can see I also have the glue on there. So once I have all the ground foam down and so forth, I spray it with some water with some soap in it, and then put in some diluted white glue. And then you notice here in this picture I also then painted the wood part. So there's a towards the section back by the backdrop, I didn't put any scenery material there because that's going to be streets and buildings and so forth, but wanted to get it painted. I didn't want any wood to be remaining on the layout. I kind of want to remove all the wood. And so this is pretty much done. I did, of course, let it dry overnight. And I, for the scenery, see, you can still see the whiteness there. So I put spray so much white glue, diluted white glue on there that you can kind of see the glue through the scenery. But when it dries, it disappears and holds the scenery in place pretty good. So it's 50-50. Actually, it's less than 50-50. More water than glue when I spray it on the scenery, because it can't be thicker than that because it won't come through the sprayer. All right, so here I have the tape removed from the track. And then I also painted the bridge as well green. I just used a brush to paint it. I didn't bother trying to spray it on. And you can still see the brush marks a little bit, but the figure's going to be weathered, so it'll be fine. I did kind of start some weathering on this one here. Have to take a look and probably do a little bit more yet, but definitely coming along. Now at this point I was also kind of preparing or prepping the fascia. You can see some of the white areas where there's screws that I had kind of fixed up, and then now we have the fascia painted. And this is the biggest difference, actually painting the fascia. It doesn't look so messy anymore, and I have the skirting up, and I also have backdrops up. Now it's interesting how these backdrops came up. I did not take actual pictures very much in Morgan, so I basically used Google. So this is a picture that I took using Google Maps, and this is actually a picture from the actual road that goes under there. And this is a mountain right by Morgan, and I made sure that the road then lined up with the backdrop. So you can see at an angle here, it looks kind of, the road is off at an angle, but if you look straight on, it works pretty good. And then here, these houses here, I actually did take this picture. I got it a little too big. You can see the white SUV in the picture is a little bit wider than the actual one on the layout. So it's a little bit too big. Fits pretty well for this driveway here. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it's close enough. I don't think it'd be that much where you can tell. There's going to be some strip mall types of buildings through here. Here's another one that I took from Google. And this one, the way the road comes on here didn't really work out very well. Where I had to take this picture from was like really far away. And it looks like it just drops off from the layout to that road. It looks like a big drop off. So I was kind of disappointed. And the picture's a little bit out of focus, a little fuzzy because it was taken from so far away. And as you can see, it kind of looks like it kind of drops off. So there's a little seam there as well. So I wasn't too happy about it, but then I had this great idea. Why don't I just make sure I have a truck there crossing the road? Now it looks great. So you can still see the road that it continues on into the backdrop, but you don't have the drop off and so on. And then so here, I'm going to change this some too. The backdrop on the right is one that I actually took, and then the one on the left is one from Google. So you can see a difference there. And I actually increased the saturation on the one from Google and decreased the saturation from the one that I took myself, but it's just too much of a contrast. So I have one of two things to do. The optimum thing for me to do at some point in time is to actually go back to Wyoming and Utah and get a drone and have the drone fly above the mainline track, and as it's going down the mainline, take pictures of Morgan. So that's my dream, is to actually get the perfect backdrops, is get a drone and have it at the right height to get the exact right angle, and then get some really great pictures. I also put some hooks up, by the way. That's for the for all the throttles and everything. But that, again, my dream is to actually go back to Wyoming, get a cheap drone. Doesn't have to be very expensive, just something that can fly at a set height, and I would just kind of go down along the main line and just take a picture every 50 feet or so, and then that would be the perfect pictures to use to put together some really nice backdrops. So for right now, though, I think this looks pretty good. I think I'm going to leave everything the way it is. The one thing I might change is that last backdrop of using the picture that I took. I think I'm going to replace that one, and maybe see if I can figure out where I was when I took that picture, and take that same picture with Google Maps, and then have the saturation match between the two. So I might do that at some point in time. Right now, though, looks pretty cool. Definitely is a nice contrast to have a city, and it'll be even more interesting once I get more buildings in, and of course getting the streets in is going to be pretty interesting. And that's definitely what I'm going to be working on in the next week, and probably a couple weeks. So this next week coming up, I want to balance the track. And so that's my main goal. And then I also want to put some streets. I want to put an actual street underneath the underpasses, and then through Morgan. And my plan is to use the Cornerstone series of streets and curbs. It's a kit, and I'm going to get just a couple of them. They're not very expensive. They're like $15 for a couple feet of street, when that includes not only the street but the curbs and gutters and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try them out and see how they look. I think it's going to work out pretty good though, from what I can tell. So anyway, the next couple of weeks before I move on down the line, I want to ballast the track and put in some streets, and I think that'll be it. And I'll move down the line to the Taggart Tunnel area, which should be really cool. Of course, I will eventually come back and put all the buildings in and put a lot of more cool details. This is going to look so much better. Well, it looks so much better from last week. This looks pretty good, if I do say so myself. Oh, one thing I am going to do, I'm going to cut this out better right there. Yeah, right between those two snow peaks. I did not cut that out very well. I have too much sky from behind, so I'm going to cut that better. That shouldn't be too hard to do, as we have a couple of stacked trains going by. But it's good to get some actual buildings and city streets and things like that. It'd be good to get that in here. So far I've been doing a lot of mountains and countryside. So pretty happy with the way it turned out. I've also been looking into weathering, by the way. I did just a little weathering on the bridge. Wasn't real happy with the way it turned out. I used some powders. But I've been looking at different materials and looking at different ways to do some weathering. I think I'll probably just stick to using an airbrush, because eventually all of this rolling stock is going to need to be weathered. Lots of fun stuff to look forward to. Model railroading definitely is the world's greatest hobby. Lots of things to keep your interest. Well, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. As I said, this week will be some ballast and everything, and hopefully some streets. And I really appreciate you tuning in and watching. Make sure you stay tuned for updates coming up. Take care, everybody.